So my driving experience before I started having challenges was mostly trouble-free. I was always quite confident. I would drive abroad. I lived in America for a while. I would drive on motorways. Nothing was a problem. I'd had one incident when I was a teenager where I'd actually had a friend who'd passed away when I was 18, and I went to go and see them in the mortuary, and I thought I was fine. And then I was driving back after that, and I actually had a panic attack in the car driving back. And yeah, that was really the only previous time I'd had a sort of an issue before the main issue started. So when the main issue started, I had actually had a full-term pregnancy, and our daughter was born on Christmas Day, and during labour we had a very unexpected birthing complication that resulted in her being starved of oxygen. So she was born alive but quite severely brain damaged, and after about 8 hours she'd had cardiac arrest and various other problems, and unfortunately they had to withdraw the life support on medical recommendations. So that all happened on Christmas Day. She was born on Christmas Day, she died on Christmas Day. And after that, I was on maternity leave, and I took a little bit of time off and then decided I really couldn't be at home on maternity leave without a baby. So I then started a new job because I couldn't quite bear to go back to my original job. And it was very overwhelming. I had a big team to manage. It was quite a big job. And then driving home one day on a dual carriageway, I had another panic attack. And then that started this dreadful cycle of every time I was on a dual carriageway or a motorway or any sort of road where I felt like I couldn't pull over, I started having panic attacks. And my concern was, I'm going to faint and I'm going to kill myself and I'm going to kill other people. And it became this cycle. So every time I was on a road where I didn't have the option to pull over, I would start having a panic attack, or I would feel the beginnings of a panic attack. In terms of coming to book the course, my worry, well, I was embarrassed. I had been this very confident, adventurous person. The thought of me having a phobia about driving was frankly embarrassing. And the only people that I admitted it was happening to was my husband and my mum. I hadn't told any friends, I hadn't told any co-workers. I was just deeply embarrassed about it. And I just felt weak, and that kind of sums up how I felt about it. So my reservations were, is this going to work? Are people going to find out? That was my main concern, really. In terms of my experience, I really liked Carmine's sort of approach and attitude. He's very calming, very matter of fact. The fact that he was a driving instructor combined with, being a CBT therapist as well, was just the winning formula for me. And I think the real breakthrough, there were two things that were a real breakthrough for me. One was him taking the time to explain to me the physiological changes that are happening in your body when you have a panic attack. So my biggest concern and what was causing the spiral was this view that I was going to, faint while driving on a motorway. And, he pretty much explained to me that unless you have an underlying health condition, due to what's happening in your body, it's actually, unless you have an underlying condition, which I don't, it's impossible to faint when you're having a panic attack because of what's going on in your body and the fact that your blood pressure is high, your heart rate is high. And so that was a real turning point for me, because I realised it was in my head and that I wasn't going to faint. And even though it was an uncomfortable experience that I was having, I wasn't going to faint, and the worst thing wasn't going to happen. So I think that was a real turning point. And then the other turning point for me was just coming up with strategies of how to manage it when it started to happen, and having things like loosening your grip on the steering wheel, or taking some time before you set out to really ground yourself, breathe, get calm. And then the commentary driving was really effective for me as well, learning, you know, to take my mind off it. So yeah, it was a real turning point for me. And then also just explaining, there was a graph that he showed me where, you know, if you pull over, essentially you keep that cycle going round and round and round. But actually, if you just bear with those uncomfortable feelings and you stick with it and you go through that, that actually you then move beyond it, and then this cycle stops. And that's exactly what happened. It's now made my life easier because I'm back to the person that I always was. I can get in a car, I can drive on a motorway, I can drive somewhere. I love adventure, I love going on holiday, and I didn't want that sort of to hold me back. I'm very sociable, so I can now do all those things. And yes, I still have the odd moment where I think about it, but you know, in my mind, I just go, no, this is a historic thing for you. You know, this doesn't happen to you anymore. This isn't your life. But also knowing that if I do start to get some feelings, I now know some strategies to sort of calm them down. So I can now drive abroad. I've driven all the way to France on dual carriageways where you can't pull off the road. I drive back to Oxford, I drive down to the coast. I do lots of motorway driving, dual carriageway driving, and yeah, it just means now I can go on the trips that I want to do. I can take my daughter somewhere without her knowing that this has been a problem for me. I didn't want her to get a fear of driving, and just, yeah, I can drive other people without feeling nervous. And I'm not saying it's completely gone away, but I can manage it now. I would absolutely recommend the driving therapy. It's made such a difference to my life. I feel back in control. I feel like I've addressed, you know, quite a key issue. And one of the things that I really liked is that Carmine takes the time to go back and tries to pinpoint why this is occurring for you. And, you know, going back and doing a timeline showed me that this had all stemmed from when I had had that traumatic experience of seeing my best friend dead. And that had then sparked that panic attack in the car, which then I didn't have for another probably about 30 years, 20 years. I didn't have another attack, you know, for a good 20 years, but he helped me understand that because I'd had another traumatic experience, it was almost like this card had popped up in my head and it was causing these problems, and then it became a cycle from there. So I think him unpicking why it happened really helped me to understand, you know, that it's happened for a reason and I can move through it. In terms of what I'd recommend to anyone thinking about booking the course, just do it. Absolutely do it. You know, something like this can really hold you back in your life, both, you know, physically through things you can and can't do, but just that how you feel about yourself and your sort of, your feelings of self-worth and confidence. And I think by taking control of it and having the strategies to deal with it, you can really move past this. And I think otherwise it can just perpetuate into a way bigger problem than it needed to be. And I'm really pleased that I sought the help. I now talk about it quite openly. I would never in a million years have thought, you know, 5 years ago when I went through this, that I would talk publicly about it. It's just something I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't even tell my friends at the time. But Carmine helped me to learn that actually talking about it is good and sharing it is good. And one thing that really struck me was the fact that he had clients from all different walks of life who'd had a similar thing, and that made me feel less alone with it, you know, you know, people you wouldn't imagine, like whether it's doctors or taxi drivers, and just realising that, you know, it's not just you, and that other people do have moments, and they can come from all sorts of different reasons. But yeah, being able to move forward has been so empowering for me, and I now feel like I'm back to the person that I always was, and I've got control of it and I know what to do when it happens, and that's given me a sense of relief.